Thanks for joining us for another Something to Think About. You know, one of the greatest challenges as we enter into week 6 or 7 of this quarantine is this new reality of how we spend our time. Because our schedules have been adapted and changed, we've had to adjust to new routines. So whether it's not being on campus for school or college, or working from home, or just something as simple as running errands, time is a new commodity. Now, for some of us, that means there's more time available, and as this has gone on and our routines have changed, I think we're finding there is more time. For others of us, it might mean less time. My wife, for instance, teaches 6th grade, and for every paper that she gets that she has to grade, it has to be uploaded, graded online, and then downloaded back to the student. And a paper that normally would take 30-45 seconds to grade now can take anywhere from 5 to 10 minutes. When you've got 23 students and 6 subjects, you can see how that's going to take a lot more time. For some of you, it's better. Your situation is more flexible. You're working at home, so you don't have to commute as much, and maybe you find that you have more hours during the week. Others of you might be irritated by it and inconvenienced and just feeling frustrated that time now is even slipping by and we don't know when or if we'll be back to some sort of normal. Whatever camp you're in, you're finding that there's a new awareness of time. As I mentioned in previous videos, one result of this that I've enjoyed is having more time with my family. A while back we went on one of the nice days to walk the golf course, and it was weird to see how many people were out walking on the golf course. They had their dogs in the dog park or just taking a stroll together as a family. And I thought, in normal situations that wouldn't have happened. First of all, you wouldn't have been able to walk on the golf course because there would have been golfers. And second of all, we just might not have prioritized that as much. We would have been at work or home making dinner or whatever the case may be, but we probably wouldn't have spent that quality time out together as a family walking on the golf course. So as we said over the course of other videos, what are our priorities? What are we finding that is now very important to us? Often we find ourselves grinding and filling our time with what is non-essential instead of redeeming the time as something valuable. We all are going to get 168 hours this week. Our 168 hours back in December or back in February, I think feels different now than our 168 hours during this week. And we have to guard against our time not being used up or wasted by what is unimportant. Technology is so wonderful, and I can't imagine doing any of this these last 6 or 7 weeks without the technology. But we have to be careful that it doesn't steal our time. Jake and Annie will constantly say to me, "How did you have so much time in college? You were always out doing something, or you guys were at a game, or whatever." And I say, believe it or not, we didn't have any technology. We had no computers, we had no cell phones, and while I wish we had, because it would have made my college life a whole lot easier and allowed me to stay connected more, it's amazing how much we spend on that without even thinking about it, and sometimes that steals hours at a time without us knowing about it. We have to offset this, or make sure that at least if we're using technology, that there's some personal development coming out of it. Otherwise, it's just kind of frivolous. And we have to ask ourselves, what am I doing to advance spiritually, physically, emotionally, relationally during a time that's very different? It's interesting how this quarantine has kind of brought us back to a more simple, more natural way of life. We're playing board games as a family. We're having discussions. We're spending a lot of time going to church together. Kids are out riding bikes. People are taking walks. It's very interesting how that's changed. And we're realizing that a lot of the fulfillment that we think we get from staring at a screen isn't necessarily that fulfilling. Even my kids now are at the point where, I'm so done with being in class online. I want to be back on campus. I want to be with my friends. And we're all looking forward to that normal, but right now it's just an arbitrary date. We don't know when normal is going to return. And when it does, when there's some semblance of what we used to know, what changes will we have made because of this? And will we have learned new things because of this different time? So I want to encourage us in this short video to really see spiritual principles in our everyday life. That's kind of why we're doing these. And I want to encourage you to ask 3 evaluation questions about how you use your time and will going forward. First of all, am I substituting what's important for what's unimportant? In other words, do you find yourself choosing to use your time on what doesn't have a lot of value instead of investing into what will make your life better? And listen, I understand we all need downtime, and one of the things I've enjoyed about this is I'm getting more sleep. I feel like I have a little bit more downtime than I did before. So it's important to relax. The Bible ordained, God ordained that we'd have a day off every week, that we'd have a time to reflect on Him. But so we're not saying every moment has to be significant. That'll burn us out. The question is, now that we've caught up on our sleep and where relationships are changing a little bit, is that our default now? And does that lead to procrastination? Does that lead to putting off what's important because we don't have the time, or we have a different sense of time? Remember all those goals we made at the start of the year about how we were going to change and losing weight and exercising more? Have we utilized this extra time to do those types of things? Or do we put that off? Do we say, well, I'll just spend another hour on social media, or I'll play a game on my phone? Are we choosing passive expenditure of time versus active and important? See, one of the dangers of doing this is the enemy will subtly reshape our priorities. If he can influence us to fall back to and eventually become used to wasting time, then the next step will be to devalue our time spent with the Lord. Because learning and maturing and serving all require a sacrifice of time and of effort. That's why the Bible says in Ephesians 5, be careful how you walk, not as unwise men, but as wise, making the most of your time because the days are evil. So don't be foolish, but understand what the will of the Lord is. In other words, the Spirit's telling us that the reason we need to prioritize our time well is because the days are evil. And I want you to encourage us, never lose sight of that reality, because the only way to offset evil is to walk in holiness. And the Spirit of God has fully equipped us to do that. He's equipped us for everything we need pertaining to life and godliness. Now that makes the next question really important. First question was, am I substituting what's important for what's unimportant? Second question is, am I being intentional about personal development? Am I setting aside time, focused time, to study the Bible, to read not just the Bible, but just for personal growth, just to shape our minds? Am I getting good health? Am I eating right? Am I getting in shape? Am I building stronger relationships? In other words, if somebody asks you right now, what are you learning? Or better yet, what's the Lord teaching you right now? What would your answer be to that? See, the Apostle Paul wrote several letters to Timothy, who was very burned out, very frustrated, very tired. He had been opposed by the people in Ephesus. And Timothy, as a pastor and as a Christian, kind of wants to quit both of them, despite his faith and his calling and his experience. Timothy was struggling to the point of wanting to give up. And Paul exhorts him in 2 Timothy 1 to get the fire back, the personal fire, the spiritual fire, the fire of his calling, and to take intentional steps to get back on track. Listen to what he says, because this is great counsel for each of us. Be diligent to present yourself approved to God as a workman who does not need to be ashamed, accurately handling the word of truth. Now that word diligent there means to exert yourself and to make every effort. In other words, intentionality. And that's why we need to do this. Listen to why we need to do this. To present ourselves approved to God. Now, often when I think about standing before the Lord, I think about the end of my life after I've died and I've gone to heaven, and I have to stand before the Lord, the Bible says, and give an account for how I lived and how I believed. But I want us to think about this on a daily basis. When you rest your head at the end on the pillow at the end of the day, give an account for how you lived that day. Did you live in a way that was pleasing to the Lord? Did you make every effort? Did you exert yourself intentionally to be approved by God, so you won't be ashamed? When we think about it on a daily basis rather than the end of our life basis, we can't defer responsibility and calling because we think, well, we'll do it later. Now it becomes a daily task of being circumspect in how we walk and making sure that we are doing what's required so that we will be able to give an account to the Lord at the end of the day, and He'll be pleased with what happened. So how have we prepared ourselves? Do we have a rationale and a reason for our faith? Could we defend that to somebody who asks us? Are we a spiritual resource right now to a person who needs encouragement and strength? I want to encourage us to use time as a means of development. And then we get to the third thought. Am I using my excess time now as an opportunity for refreshing and preparation? I want to really encourage you today to see this different season we're in as this time of development, to use it as an opportunity for personal and spiritual refreshing and preparation for whatever's ahead. You know, time and time again, we see in the Gospels that Jesus, after an exhausting day of ministry, after people were pressing against Him and asking things, and He was healing and teaching and taking on the Pharisees and trying to encourage the apostles, at the end of the day, He didn't say to the 12, I'm so tired. Give me some space. I need to chill out. I need to relax a little bit, and I got to get some sleep. Instead, what do we often see? Him going up into the mountains late at night or early in the day before it even dawned and spending focused time with the Father. Now, if the Son of God in human flesh had to do that because He experienced everything we experience, how much more do you and I need that quality set-aside time of development and preparation? Because the flesh is strong, and we aren't God in flesh. We're just flesh who have been redeemed and sanctified and transformed. But we still need to make sure that we're feeding our spirit. Listen, social media, internet might be a great place for connection. TV's a good place to just chill and relax. A good book. I love a good book on a nice day like this. But those don't really develop us spiritually. And we have to be intentional about spending time to not allow it to be eaten up by other things, but to spend time intentionally to grow and develop. So as the Lord gives us a new awareness of time during this period that we're in, let's make sure we're using it wisely and growing in our faith. That's something to think about for today. I pray the Lord will strengthen you and encourage you by this little word, and that we'll continue to walk in His Spirit every day. God bless you.